bear rushed straight at the hobgoblin, and the hobgoblin, realizing that it was very difficult for him, understood that the resistance to electricity failed to cancel out the damage caused by the bear completely. And the goblins, who had no resistance to electricity, were incinerated. The next moment, the orcs began to attack the goblins along with the bear. Our hero understood that with his current symptoms, he would not be able to save them. Our hero understood that he had to run. He had apparently become overconfident because of his abilities. But he couldn't afford to lose this body, because if he used these guys as bait, he would certainly be able to escape. At this moment, he was carefully looking at the goblins, in front of whom stood a giant bear, carefully observing what could happen to them now. And the next moment, he tried to attack the bear, realizing that the goblins were in danger. Hitting the bear right in the neck with his head, our hero could not believe that he had done something so illogical. Well, this is the moment the bear bit through our hero's hand. The goblins, seeing this, cried out, summoning the hobgoblin Sama, who was injured by the bear. The strength was incredible and therefore, the hobgoblin's right arm was now useless, but he was still able to fight. Looking at his bitten hand, our hero thought. As for airborne infection, the virus is killed by electricity even before it enters the body. After he threw the spear earlier, part of the virus managed to enter the bear's body, through the eyes. Our hero has acquired some skills from this. In short, it is possible that the thunder bear's electricity covers the surface of its body, but not its insides. Based on this, if his blood got into his body, then the next moment he understood everything. Then he froze with realization. At this point, as many negative symptoms as possible were activated, such as anemia, hunger, fatigue, exhaustion, and infirmity. The bear howled, and at that moment, symptoms of electric shock and absorption of electricity, resistance to shock were also received. Our hero understood that he had done this, the negative symptoms worked on the bear, and he was able to let go of his hand. A surge of symptoms, sharp claws, physical manipulation, blade protection, enhanced arms, superhuman strength. It was applied to himself. At that moment, the bear tried to use his lightning bolts again. Our hero, standing not far from him, thought that he had a lot of symptoms associated with lightning, and now the lightning of the bear had absolutely no effect on him. The next moment, our hero was able to dissect a bear that was in front of him, and they also received symptoms of generating magical power, electromagnetic discharge and rage. In the heat of battle and a sense of superiority, our hero realized that he had done it, he was not too self-confident and the strongest. The next moment, thinking to himself and caressing himself with compliments, our hero fell right in front of the rest of the goblins. Falling right in front of the goblins, they did not expect their leader to collapse unconscious. But when our hero woke up, everything returned to normal. The next moment, our hero was brought a booty, which was simply delicious, and there were many different foods in front of him. 3 days ago, there was a conflict with the Thunder Bear, since then he has been living with goblins. Obviously, now that the orcs were gone, they could collect a lot of food. And the injury that he received usually prevents a person from living a normal life. Nevertheless, in just 3 days he was able to recover, thanks to the effects of symptoms of regeneration and vitality. The symptoms he had imposed on the goblins had also been deactivated. After all, suddenly one of the people will notice their mutations, our hero thought, sitting in a cave in goblins and watching how they darted around him sweetly. The next moment, when they brought some fruit to the hobgoblin, the goblins asked him to try it because it was insanely delicious. But he said that everything was fine, they could eat it themselves. The goblins, beaming at our hero, said that they wanted the hobgoblin to eat him herself, so they asked him to try, saying that they loved the hobgoblin very much. Sitting on their throne, the goblins jumped on our hero. The same one was thinking about how much there was, or rather it was the first time that so many goblins loved him. Our hero was starting to think that spending time here as a boss wasn't so bad. Suddenly, addressing Hobgoblin Sama, the other goblins explained that they had found something strange. Our hero became interested, asking about what had already happened. However, now that our hero has become a virus, he felt like he wanted to take over everything around him. If he uses this mask, he will be able to disguise himself as a human. It was the same mask that the goblins brought to him. Taking it, our hero looked carefully at that mask because his face might not be visible in it. Chapter 6.1 The goblins, looking at our hero, asked if this was exactly what the Hobgoblin Sama wanted. A chatter started between them, and everyone was looking closely at what our hero was doing. He explained that he really wanted it. At that moment, he was pulling on gloves and the very mask that the goblins had brought him. When he was getting dressed, he thought that clothes from this world were very difficult to put on. Well, then, adjusting his helmet, he wondered if they wore it like that. The next moment, our hero presented himself in front of the scraped ones. Reporting that in the last battle, he realized that he was quite weak and went on a journey to become stronger. The goblins shouted that the hobgoblin was already strong enough and asked him not to leave them standing in the cave surrounding our hero. The same one explained that it was also hard for him to leave them. At this moment, after all, he could never have thought that he would eventually get so used to these goblins. It's like that nostalgic feeling when you leave your dog at home. One of the goblins tearfully asked Hobgoblin-sama to take the Thunder Bear's fur because it is very durable and warm. It can be used in many ways, so I ask you to take it. Our hero tried to cheer up the goblins by saying that they were already strong and fought on a par with the orcs. Therefore, he entrusted this place to them while he was traveling and asked them to wait for him here. He would definitely return. The goblins looked at each other and then began to shout that they did not understand everything because the hobgoblin would return on her own and they were strong, so they asked not to worry about them. Our hero, coming out of their cave and turning around, explained that he was counting on these goblins. They obeyed him, looking after their master, who was leaving them. There are no more orcs, and he had enough symptoms inside these guys to avoid suspicion from humans. This will help them protect themselves. If he is ever around, he may come to check on them. At this moment, the goblins wished good luck to their leader. Walking away into the distance, our hero thought that now he is heading to the city house that Elena showed him. At that moment, he remembered how they spent their time, and even if he met the girl again, she would not recognize him in her wolf form. If he becomes an adventurer, then maybe he will have the opportunity to meet her again. The next moment, thinking about Elena and about his appearance, our hero decided to look around, thinking about whether he looked like a human at all. After all, anything is possible. He had a very suspicious outfit. But he still managed to hide his green skin. Besides, he's been practicing speaking for the last few days. At that moment, he tried to squeeze out the word hello, thinking that if it wasn't so difficult to understand, it probably was. But then, after thinking a little, our hero wondered if it was even possible to understand what he was saying. And so he began to worry about getting into the city. After all, our hero wanted to be completely sure of everything before he got to the city, but he wasn't sure he could handle it. Then his friend noticed that there was a carriage at the bottom of the cliff, and in front of it were the knights who defended the carriage. And our hero realized that this carriage was surrounded by a pack of wolves. The knights understood that there were more and more of these creatures, and it was much harder to deal with them already. The next moment, looking at the carriage, they realized that the wolves were aiming at the cargo. Then a friend of one of the wolves rushed at the knight and tried to gnaw his sword. The knight, holding his defenses, thought that they might not be able to cope with so many. At that moment, our hero arrived in time and was able to defeat the wolf, using the symptom of stealth and hitting the wolf right in the back. The knights, of course, did not have time to see who it was, then suddenly they saw our hero and asked to identify themselves. Our hero was standing nearby, thinking that it looks like stealth works great in the forest, and decided that he needed to identify himself since the knight asked him to do so. A little nervous, our hero was able to utter a greeting. The knights were a little surprised, then they also greeted him, and our hero was very happy because they were able to communicate. He explained that he was here to help them. The knights do not quite understand what our hero is saying. They tried to ask him again. He explained that this was true because he was here to help them. The only thing that bothered our hero's thoughts was whether the knights realized that he was a goblin or not. The knights, having carefully looked at our hero, thought that he was still so scared that he could not speak properly. They could not allow a man in such a state to fight, and therefore asked him to step aside as soon as possible. And the next moment they shouted at the young man to be careful because there was a wolf behind him. Turning around, he was able to deal with him with one fist, saying that the wolf annoyed him, and so that he would stop interrupting their conversation, our hero spoke after sorting it out. Those watching from the carriage thought that the young man was very strong watching the scenes that unfolded in front of him. After thinking a little, the young man realized that he had to be careful, where if his clothes were torn, they would notice his green skin. He had to develop some negative symptoms in the wolves and then eliminate them quickly. Therefore, getting up after the battle with the wolf, he decided to deal with them. At that moment, virus particles began to spray, but no one noticed it. Except for our hero. The knights at that moment said that they would also help him by rushing with swords at the wolves. But our hero asked them to wait. The next moment, the virus also got to the knights themselves. Symptoms were received. laryngation, reflexes, kinetic vision, serenity. Our coat of arms understood that he had made a mistake and accidentally infected a person. He didn't know what to do if he didn't know how advanced medicine was in this world. But it is quite possible that if the virus is detected, it will be possible to develop a vaccine, and it will be destroyed. At this moment, our hero was trying to figure out what he needed to do, dealing with the next wolves that came running right to him. The next moment, the rest of the wolves, seeing this, began to run away, and the knights, noticing this, realized that their cargo remained safe. Therefore, we approached our hero to thank him. Approaching him, the knights reported that thanks to our hero, they were able to defeat these wolves, and that the young man for it just amazing. Looking at his hand, they said that the strength of his hands was simply inhuman, because probably, the young man should have been a great swordsman. Therefore, they asked that, if it was not difficult, could the young man show his face, asking about what was his name, and bombarding him with questions. Here's a friend when our hero found himself in a desperate situation. A man got out of the carriage saying that our hero helped them a lot. He saw a young man in a fancy hat getting out of this carriage, saying that he didn't even know what would have happened if our hero hadn't been here, so he thanked him from the bottom of his heart, bowing to his savior. After looking at this guy, our hero was still surprised if this guy had previously been sitting in a carriage. The knights, running up to Roy-sama, asked if he was all right. To which the young man replied that everything was fine with him, thanks to all of them, the cargo was safe, and so was he. Chapter 6.2 The young man explained that when the carriage stopped, he thought that his luck was over, but it seemed that a very amazing meeting was waiting for him, which promised him good luck. Addressing our hero, the young man explained that he was a merchant of the Valkyrie company, and his name was Roy Hard. And the aroma coming from this special custom-made meat must have attracted the wolves on the way to the city. And the escort seemed to be already exhausted from the journey, he explained. When our hero saw the merchant, he was very fascinated. At that moment, the merchant was talking a lot. Our hero thought that he has very good clothes, good posture, and his business seems to be going well. In other words, our hero thought that he had just hit the jackpot. He was thinking that he probably should have been rewarded handsomely after they arrived in the city. Meanwhile, the young man said that nevertheless, even if his knights were tired, the Grey Wolves should not have caught his faithful by surprise. Our hero said a little later that this was probably the case. The young man continued to chat, saying that, besides, the way our hero fought was like nothing else. Roy has seen many battles in his life, but this is the first time he has seen someone fight like this. Instead of recklessness, he has overwhelming confidence and the ability to back it up. Seeing his strength, he was overwhelmed with a sense of admiration, he explained. At this moment, our hero was thinking about the fact that he had received so many compliments. Was this friendly person really so kind without this typical greed of rich dudes? And the young man believed that the way our hero fought, as if he was not afraid of death at all. At this moment, the young man was smiling very broadly. Our hero was amazed by what the guy said. This comparison, of course, scared him very much. It must have been just a metaphor. He is the virus, so until it is completely destroyed, it will not disappear. That was true, of course, but as for medicine, he needed to casually ask about how medicine works in this world. Then our hero asked, saying that many people have been sick lately, asking if the young man was feeling well right in front of him. He reported that recently miasma has been appearing in cities, causing people to get sick. Mana crystals also began to appear, causing misfortune in people, and mineral disease next to them. After hearing about it all, our hero tried to understand what mineral disease and miasma are and what they are. Then he thought about the possibility that this disease is inherent in this world. So far, he could ask a little bit about something else, and therefore the first thing that came to mind was just to ask about viruses. The young man sitting right in front of him heard the word virus, thought for a long time, and then smiling did not understand what it was. He was a little stunned by our hero's question. And then the guy talked about how he had never heard of viruses before and apologized for his ignorance. He had heard that these people did not know what a virus was. Our hero was shocked. After all, the young man in front of him did not seem to him to be a man devoid of education, which meant that the viruses had not yet been discovered. But, on the other hand, maybe there were no viruses other than him in this world at all. Therefore, the young man decided to explain that viruses are crystals that have been discovered recently, minerals or something like that. Then the young man said that everything became clear to him. It's probably a rather strange name. But our hero thought that if viruses do not exist in this world or have not yet been discovered, then he could do whatever he wanted. These soldiers were very good people, the young man thought, looking out of the carriage. And at the moment, any symptom that could be received from people was very valuable. Since he had already infected one of them, he was sure that no one would mind if he acquired a few more. The next moment, releasing virus particles, our hero thought that if he increases the number of viruses, he may have new symptoms. The next moment, symptoms were received, such as basic instincts, evasion, composure, and intuition. Realizing that he had succeeded, our hero thought that now he would have a lot of new opportunities. But that wasn't all he was given. Therefore, in the next moment, he also had latency, deception, cunning, and resistance to poisons. And he wondered if there really were a few disturbing symptoms after hearing all this. Then, turning to Roy, the young man asked if these guys were his subordinates. The guy explained that apart from the coachman, no one else is an employee of the company, they are just mercenaries hired as an escort. Looking at them, it was our hero who eventually saved him. Roy didn't quite understand why he had hired them in the first place. The young man thought that the hired killer was rather suspicious. The next moment, the system was talking about the manifestation of symptoms. Clear thinking, negotiation, persuasion, serenity. The young man understood that this was not all, and looking at these symptoms, he thought that they were very different from soldiers. Then he realized that these symptoms were not generally soldier-like. Looking at the young man who was sitting right in front of him, because in the end, he infected this guy. Our hero had previously opened a window to infect the knights. Therefore, the young man asked if our hero had opened the window because it was stuffy here. Of course, he didn't suspect anything about any viruses or what our hero was doing. It was probably not the best idea to spread the virus in such a confined space. Well, there wasn't much difference between 4 or 5, our hero thought. After all, even the symptoms of a merchant, this skill strip seems to be useful, since in the future he will walk around the city. If you look at it and judging by the symptoms he received, he must have been a successful trader. Perhaps he had become the target of business competitors, so the mercenaries were a little suspicious. If he had to save his life again, our hero would like to receive a reward. After all, this is how he can earn the expenses necessary for his research, right here and now, our hero thought with sparkling eyes. Turning to Roy, our hero wanted to explain about a suspicious guy among the mercenaries. The young man did not listen to him at all, looking out of the carriage. He was thinking that it looked like they were already there. Smiling and glad that the city was right in front of him. After all, as our hero probably knew, it was the city of Faust. Looking out of the carriage, the young man realized that he had already been introduced to this place 2 times. The next moment they got out of the carriage, and Roy apologized and asked to wait for our hero for a minute. After all, the contract with the maintainers is valid only up to this point. Our hero, getting out of the car, thought that these people were really going their separate ways. After all, he was mistaken in believing that this guy's life was in danger. At this moment, our hero was standing and waiting for the young man. Roy, addressing him, apologized for keeping him waiting. He is deeply grateful for saving his life, he would like to give it to him in gratitude. At this moment, our hero thought about what, probably, it was the money that they wanted to offer him. The next moment, there was absolutely no money in front of him, but a card that Roy handed to him, explaining that this card was issued only to special persons in the Valkyrie company. It wasn't exactly what our hero imagined, trying to figure out what he needed to do with her. Then they explained to him that he could use this card to get discounts on products that their company represents when he needs it. Then he could contact Roy and just show them this. Looking at the map of the young men, I thought that it was quite convenient, but if you think about it, he doesn't have any connections yet. Having friends can be even more profitable than just getting money. Addressing Roy, our hero reported that he was new to the city. Therefore, he did not know anyone and said that if he had problems, could he hope for the young man's help. And he, holding out his hand to him, informed him that he would do everything possible for the one who saved his life. Looking at him, our hero thought that this guy was very good. He felt a little guilty for taking advantage of his kindness, but the skills of a merchant would come in handy. He decided that he would take all the skills that this guy possessed. At that moment, they shook hands, and the system reported that new symptoms had been received. The symptoms were such as murder, silence, invisibility, stealth, presence detection, hiding the presence of shadow magic abilities, acting, were also received. Our hero did not expect at all that such a seemingly kind young man had such skills. And then, releasing his hand, Roy informed him that it might seem rude on his part, but still he asked to accept his money. Our hero explained that this was not necessary, explaining that he could not take money for a good deed. And then he suddenly remembered that he had to do something, saying goodbye to the young man. The virus in the goblin's body realized that he was too careless. All these disturbing symptoms that he received, it turns out, belonged to this guy. If he wanted to live a peaceful life, he shouldn't have messed with such people. Roy, looking at him, could not understand because the guy was in this city for the first time. What could be so urgent? Did he really suspect something about it? Roy wondered, looking at our fleeing hero. The merchant understood that this man had several secrets that he did not reveal to anyone. But Roy thought they would get along great because he was looking forward to working with this stranger in the future, Roy said, smiling and leaving. Chapter 7.1 And our hero, who was breathing heavily, decided to sit down a little in the alleys. After all, when he found out that this guy was a murderer, he ran away. But this was not necessary, probably, our hero thought about it after a while. After all, he had already infected this youth, so if it came to a battle, he would definitely have the advantage. But he had never met murderers before, it was absolutely normal to be scared. Sitting in the doorway, he thought that now he was completely exhausted. First of all, he had to explore the city, and maybe he could find a hotel to rest in. Walking through the streets, he realized that it was really another world only. You could look at all these different races that were walking down the street. He was interested to see what symptoms he could get from all these people. At this moment, while he was walking, he was thinking about his own. Someone asked him to wait, addressing the distinguished guests. Looking down, our hero saw a hobbit or a dwarf, or rather someone similar to him. And the man explained that the young man was standing at the entrance to their 3-star establishment in such dirty clothes. Asking if he really wanted to stay here, because he must be joking. Explaining that he doesn't have rooms for a suspicious person like our hero. The next person the young man approached was a humanoid cat, who, upon seeing our hero, explained that really, if he wanted to stay here, he looked very suspicious. Looking at the elf that was in front of him with a cigarette in his mouth. He informed him that our hero could touch here regardless of whether he was as clean as a pigeon or looked like he had just killed someone. But those who can't pay are out of the question. But if our hero wanted to stay here, he needed to have at least some money. After looking at all these people, our hero thought that he just wanted to return to the goblin nest. And so the young man thought that he had no money, but he had something to sell. The man reported that they only accepted cash. The hero thought that the civilized world is really a terrible place to live. That man suddenly reported that in the Adventurers Guild, he could only buy fur from him for money. After hearing about the Adventurers Guild, our hero asked about it. And the man said that if there were rumors that he had allowed him to stay here for free, it would create problems in the future. But if he returns with the money, the man will let him stay, even if a little is not enough. After hearing this, our hero thought about what it means after all, there are good people like this guy. Therefore, our hero, after listening to him, thought that he needed to go to the Adventurers Guild to exchange something so that he would have money. Arriving at the gorgeous building, our hero saw the Adventurers Guild. As he walked inside, he wondered if this building looked like an office. But when he went inside, he saw that everyone in the guild was having fun, and the atmosphere was like in a bar on a Friday night. At this moment, our hero was greeted by a waitress who was serving drinks on the tables. Thus, adventurers who have just received money can leave them here. It was quite a good business move. If he had spread the virus here, he would have received a whole bunch of symptoms. But he thought that maybe it would be better if he did not do anything serious until he had studied the city better, and he thought about it. As he walked through the tavern, he realized that he stood out too much, and all the people were staring at him. Thinking that he just needed to hurry up and exchange the fur for gold in order to leave faster. As he walked through the guild, he thought about where he needed to present it. For the first time here, a friend saw a beautiful older sister, who waved to him, greeting our hero, smiling at him. After greeting her, the young man approached her. The girl asked if he was here for the first time. The young man explained that this was true, but he would like to show the fur. Then the girl asked him to fill out a form for the registration of adventurers. But our hero explained that he was from the village and therefore had no documents. The girl explained that everything was fine. Our hero was very surprised at how quickly she could serve him. The girl explained that the Adventurers Guild operates on the principle of complete meritocracy. Everyone is welcome here, even those who have a special position like our hero, because they have always lacked manpower. Therefore, she asked the young man to introduce himself so that she could register him. After thinking a little, our hero introduced himself as Walker the Parasite. Walker was his English name from his previous life. He thought that parasite was the French way of pronouncing the word parasite. Although the name was just something he came up with on the spot. It sounded quite logical. Thinking that he wasn't exactly a parasite. The girl, issuing the card, reported that it was his 6th grade card, referring to Walker Parasite. It was also his label. If he raised his rank to grade 4, he would be able to conveniently use his card as an identity card. She started talking about how it was quite difficult to work alone, but Mr. Parasite looked pretty strong, so in the blink of an eye he would find a party and be like a beginner with great potential. When he took his card, he thought that it looked like a tag on a dog collar because the card was hanging on a chain. And the girl said, since the young man was here for the first time, she could help him with choosing a quest. Therefore, they could look at which quest to choose for our hero and to start with the F rank, for example, collecting medicinal herbs. The young man also tried E ranks, for example, to collect the horns of a horned rabbit. Our hero, showing the fur, asked if he could sell it first. The girl was very surprised that he had already collected something before registering as an adventurer. Asking about the fact that she knew he had something. Looking at the fur she saw, she said that it just couldn't be. In front of her was Mecha, the S-rank thunder bear that they had asked to kill. Thinking about what really happened, it was his fur. At that moment, everyone in the tavern fell silent and began to whisper about our hero, thinking that he could really defeat the thunder bear. The girl apologized for asking, but how exactly did he get it? Our hero explained that he had killed a gram bear himself, and the next moment he wondered if he had done something wrong. It turned out that it was a monster whose extermination had already been a quest. It was bad, he felt like he had just brought a lot of attention to himself. The girl also said that there was nothing terrible about it was just that the thunder bear was a very strong demonic beast to fight alone. But our hero asked for forgiveness, he was just showing off, and it took 20 people to deal with him, and he wasn't lying because there were about 20 goblins. It was difficult to finish him off, some people died, but they managed to do it. Asking about how it was because he was a beginner with potential. The girl exhaled at that moment and said that it was true because while he was doing quests, their employees would not find out the details. And since he had brought sufficient evidence, there was a reward in front of him for the murder. A bag of gold fell in front of our heroes and everyone stared at it intently. And the young man thought that he was very glad that he managed to sell this fur. After all, as he thought, he still does not know how to communicate with other people, but he stands out too much. He needed to hurry up and get out of here, however, they really didn't bother to get to him to find out the details. This made him wonder if the reason the guild was doing this was because they were accepting people without any documents, and maybe even criminals. The employee seemed to be a kind and sympathetic person, but she also had to be quite qualified because she also had several scars. The girl was fragile, but even if she was wearing clothes, it was still obvious how hard she had been training. He was sure that if he had infected her, he would have developed new symptoms. The girl apologized to our hero, smiling. Then he tried to justify his actions because before that he had been carefully examining the girl. The girl also said that another person is waiting in line. Therefore, he turned around and thought about the fact that he was detaining this man. At this moment, Elena appeared in front of our hero, who was standing behind him and holding a basket with various herbs and plants behind her back. Then she looked at the young man carefully. He absolutely did not expect to see her so quickly, and the girl looked at our hero in surprise.